Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday Live here on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube and anywhere else that we can get Restream to connect to. Hey guys, I'm Jeff DeVerter, Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace Technology. Sure do enjoy coming to you with these live sessions. You know, it's my favorite part. I do a lot of pre-recorded videos. I do the podcast, which if you haven't subscribed to Cloud Talk, you want to make sure that you do that now while I'm chatting. But my favorite thing is the interactivity that we have here. So especially if you're in LinkedIn, you know, use the chat down below, the comment section. Let me know you're here. Who are you and where are you connecting from? It makes it a lot of fun. Now, today's conversation, well, oddly enough, it's about cloud and it's about technology. But I wanted to start with a bit of news. And the news is from an article put out by Datamation. Now, Datamation has this article that came out in the past 24 hours, and it talks about the 5 cloud computing trends to watch. Let me bring this over here onto the screen so I'm not looking away from you. And those trends are this. Growing hybrid and cloud multi-cloud setups. So hybrid and multi-cloud, we knew that was a thing, but that's number one. Second, tightening internal and external security. Internal and external. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And number 3, emphasis on Kubernetes and all things containerization. Containers, guys, if you're thinking multi-cloud, number 3 ties directly to number 1. Multi-cloud and containerization are, they're not synonymous, of course, but containerization, as I mentioned last week when talking to Taylor Bird, it is one of the ways to make multi-cloud a reality, in my opinion. And I think we can substantiate that. Now, number 4, cloud native advances. And then number 5, sustainability efforts, which I think is a super interesting thing to also consider. Hey, looks like we got some folks. Oh, Nigeria, first one from Nigeria, from Ghana. So good representation from that continent. Everyone, so glad that you're here this morning. So those 5 key trends, what I thought we might do today as we discuss those trends and talk about all things cloud transformation is to talk about how you get in and support this work. Hey, someone from Massachusetts, glad you're here. Because even though these workloads are now in a new location and arguably probably running in new technologies and new methodologies, depending if you're lift and shift, move and improve, or if you're doing full transformation as you go into adopting a cloud methodology, well, you still have to manage and support those workloads. And it looks very different depending on where you are and how it's running. But I thought for our conversation today, and remember, it's a conversation. I want you guys to pipe in here. India, always glad to have someone from India. And Sydney, that's why I love doing these early in the morning in the US. We get Sydney to show up. But I thought we would bring in is a good friend, longtime friend, long time racker, and that is a gentleman named Travis Runty. Now, in old school Rackspace email parlance, it would be first initial last name, so he goes by Trunty. At least any old school racker would call him that. So, Daniel, why don't we bring him up onto stage? And guys, it is my distinct pleasure to bring to you the one and the only Travis Runty, and I'm going to tell you all our backstory here. but it's somebody I haven't had onto the show before, but sorry. Travis, why don't you tell the world who you are and what you do here?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. Hey, so Travis Runty, as Jeff mentioned. I've been at Rackspace for actually be 14 years this Friday, so coming up on 14 years. And what I do for Rackspace is the vice president of our global cloud operations. So what that means is I lead all of our technical delivery for about 500 engineers across the world, supporting all of Rackspace's public and private cloud technology needs, as well as our Elastic engineering offering. So really, really exciting mission, really, really challenging mission, which is likely what I'm here to talk about with Jeff.
It exactly is. Now, when I first met you, I think it was my first week or two at Rackspace. I joined the first time in 2008, May of 2008. So it was probably just after Rookie O. And I go to a gentleman named Pat Beyer. And I said, Pat, I don't understand this thing called Core. It seems to do a lot of things. And he goes, go sit with Travis. Travis will help you out. Travis, you were a support specialist at the time. What did a support specialist do at Rackspace?
Yeah, that That was me thinking I knew a lot about Linux, but I wanted to join Rackspace to be a professional Linux engineer. Right? Turns out I didn't really know that much about Linux, but I realized I wanted to join Rackspace, and so I took a role as it's called support specialist. And essentially, what it is you answer the phones because Rackspace doesn't use IVRs, and you make sure that the customer gets the support that they need, and you redirect their workload to the appropriate specialist. And so I was essentially just routing tickets, routing customers, escalations to the right experts. It was really exciting. You got to see a lot of neat technologies and kind of confirmed that that Linux engineering track is the track that I wanted to take, and ultimately did.
Now, the business that Rackspace was in, we'll talk about it specifically at the time, managed hosting. Managed hosting meaning we had data centers, we had servers, and we had smart people like yourself and Duda and so many names from back then. I don't know if Duda's
Yeah.
watching. I doubt it. But what did it mean? Yeah, and we were basically outsourcing, if you will, the system administration for our customers' workloads. And what did that mean? What were the things that a Rackspace would do, or that anyone would have to do at the time to manage workloads?
Yeah, I mean, at that time it was all private cloud, right? And private cloud wasn't really called private cloud; it was just called managed hosting,
Yeah.
and that was us racking and stacking hardware in our data centers, and supporting from power, ping, all the way up through OS, and then doing the ongoing management for all that for that entire stack. Most of our work was oriented towards ensuring that the application, the workloads were stable, that alerts were generating, and that ultimately the overall health of the systems were being managed and monitored and responded to. So I think probably for a good year, most of my lifetime was focused on CPU and disk and memory alerts. So that's what we did back then mostly.
Well, and it was really, by the way, welcome from Chile. I think, nice that you're the first person that we've had from Chile, so I'm glad that you're here. But what we did at Rackspace at the time was really just a way to, commoditization is the wrong term, but I would say maybe a better way to put it would be refinement of how you would provide support for workloads, that could be running in a customer's data center, could be running in ours, could be running anywhere. It was just we did it better, we did it faster, we did it all the reasons why we built a very successful business and outlasted pretty much 99.9% of all of our competitors at the time. And but what I thought would be interesting is now to maybe start to compare and contrast, because that was just taking what everybody already did, but doing it better and doing it in a consolidated fashion. But the way we support workloads today, Travis, and nobody knows this better than you because you lead 500 people who do this. More from India, welcome. Is let's start to compare and contrast what supporting workloads, even in managed hosting / private cloud, looks like today, or even as we go out into public cloud. So what are some of the differences that you've noticed, or the types of engineers and people you're looking for? Kind of any way you want to take this.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, 14 years ago, a lot of generalists, right? It was generally your sysad that would do um, a lot of things. I think as the years advanced and the technologies became a bit more complicated and had critical mass, we saw the immediate need for specialization. And so that's probably the primary difference that we see from then to today is today we deliver all of our cloud expertise and our cloud support through specialized cloud engineers.
Mm.
So from the VMware platform, we'll have VMware engineers, which likely have a sysad background or a networking background, but really their focus all day, every day is the VMware technology stack. And so they operate within vCenter or the vSuite of tools. And I'd say that the supporting automation that we've built organically based off customer needs feedback over the years has really, really, really evolved to where they're focusing their efforts not on the CPU, disk, memory alerts. They're focusing their energy on understanding customers' outcomes
Right.
and working more so on those transformative, maybe aggressive, but really those projects to make sure the customers' workloads are evolving. I would say from
That's
the from the public cloud.
just,
Go
yeah, I
ahead,
was
Jeff.
just going to say that. I mean, that I want to pause on that one for a second, because I think
Yeah,
it's a huge thing to call out, as opposed to you could very succinctly, tie memory disk and CPU to outcome, because the outcome was, hey, run my server better. Okay, well, servers run on memory,
that's
CPU,
right.
and disk. But when you think about all the other things, it's driving towards specific business outcomes. And that is not necessarily always or rarely tied to CPU memory and disk. By the way, everyone who's listening,
Yeah.
you're talking to the guy who hires everybody for Rackspace for support. So if you have a question about what it takes to be a world-class engineer today, and you may even catch the eye of a company like Rackspace or another, or a big industry, enterprise you might want to work for, now's your chance to ask that question. But you ask it while we continue to talk about this. So difference in CPU memory and disk in today. So I'll let you continue, Travis.
Yeah, well, that's a good call out, right? Customers have very high expectations, right? And so while CPU, disk, and memory at the time was market leading, their expectations have evolved, right? That's just
Yeah.
table stakes today. That has to work. It has to be a non-issue. We shouldn't be talking about that, right? And so just the customer needs have become more and more specialized or focused on the technologies. And we've had to evolve for that. And so from the public cloud perspective, I would say it's different, but it's complicated in its own way. And so really unique thing about the public cloud is you have the opportunity to operate very cloud native, or you could operate similar to you've operated your private cloud for years, right? And with as broad as our customer base is, we see customers leveraging the cloud very, very differently. And so you do have some customers that still want those CPU, disk, and
Right.
memory alerts on their public cloud, which surprises me, but that's where they are today, right? Meanwhile, you might go to the next customer engagement, and you're doing a CI/CD pipeline review for them, and it's a very, very, very broad spectrum of customer maturity and needs. Now, that's complicated in and of itself, right? Because you're doing a lot
Yeah.
of context switching, different types of customers, but you have to have the team members that can support this offering. And so, as we evolve our customer base, we've had to evolve our workforce. And so it's a really unique challenge ensuring that we have the right team members that are always skilled up and available 24/7 across the world to support our customers from hey, how do I spin up, this instance to, hey, here's a really, really complex challenge I have. Can you help me with that? And so, yeah, the range that we're seeing in customer maturity has resulted in a lot of complexity and upskilling and onboarding our team members.
Right. All right. Hey, Jen, thanks for coming in from Houston, also from Victor from Nigeria. Glad that you are here. Don't forget to ask your question of Travis. And I did see the question about building cloud agnostic, and we'll get there in just one second. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep tying to memory disk and CPU because we're sort of throwing rocks at it. We're saying, oh, remember the old
A little
days? All
bit.
we could do was this. Well, it was all we could do. It was the only lever, other than more servers, which is more memory, CPU, and
Yeah.
disk.
Yeah. That or restarting IIS several times a day, right?
uh, so but now your cloud engineers have to make recommendations. The old recommendation was your
Hmm.
application has poor performance because of these reasons, and the reasons were memory, disk, or CPU. And we need now we need a strategy for how to deal with that. And now the second piece of that is in today's world, especially when you're talking hypercloud or you're talking provider, and now your engineers have to make a recommendation, and it could be you need more virtual machines. You need to resize those things. So we are going to do that in the background for
Yeah.
you. Or it may be that you're working with a specific type of technology and make recommendations to other serverless based things. Hey, you're still authenticating, you're still running an IaaS based SQL instance. Why don't we run that as a PaaS-based instance? We'll talk about how to get you there. So, that's a critical thinking type of a level that is much more complex than just what they had in their toolbox before. So how do you train for that? How do you hire for that?
Yeah, it's tough, and I'll even complicate it further. Right? Is for a lot of these customers, we're doing these actions for them, right?
Mhm.
And so you have a customer that has increasing infrastructure demands and likely cost pressures, and we don't always find that mix correctly, right? We've over provisioned in response to the infrastructure demands and created unexpected costs. And so getting
Yeah.
that balance right is another piece that we're having to train on, which that's a completely new skill set, right?
Mhm.
Hey, engineer, you don't knowing how to do this isn't enough, right? It's understanding the customer's business needs, and impact from a cost profile that we may be invoking unexpectedly. So I'll tell you that when I source talent on my teams, I look for well-rounded talent. It's very, very rare for a team member to, or for a technologist to just jump into the cloud.
Yeah.
Um, I think that having someone that has sysad background, networking background, and a some sort of programming or scripting background is key.
Yeah.
Um, uh, the range of technologies that we see within these public clouds is so broad that inevitably you'll have team members that will specialize within a group, but
Yeah.
really your base skill set has to be so broad to be effective, because those conversations do flip kind of with a blink of an eye. Even on the same
Mm.
customer call, you might go from talking database recommendations to CDN recommendations, right? And so it, you have to be very fluid and agile and have a strong foundation.
Yeah, the lines used to be so much cleaner and more succinct in the past. You had your sysadmins, you had the networking team, you had the security team. Well, now you need an individual with that's aware of that, but even more so. And the point that you made, I think, extraordinarily well, and that is a strong business knowledge as well. Because before,
Mm-hmm.
and let's forget Rackspace context. Let's just say sysadmin working for Coca-Cola, Home Depot, any of these large organizations. And if they didn't have the infrastructure that they needed, they said, "Hey, boss, we don't have the infrastructure we need to run this application." And the boss would go on about, ultimately getting to finance, and finance finding things, finding servers, and servers coming in, and it being there. No, not that there's no understanding or appreciation for the costs associated with it, but really no direct impact either. You want your app to run? This is what you need. Now, if you apply that, like you just said, to today's world, where the sysadmin also has the ability to provision infrastructure, well, they have a direct financial, moment by moment financial impact. I mean, I'd like to say half of what you do, or the value that your team brings, just, and I'm making up the number here, is that the focus on helping make sure that the cloud spend is right, because that is
Mm-hmm.
one of the key strategies, or one of the key tools that a cloud engineer brings to the table. And it's not just how can I make your app run right, but I need to be able to make your app run right at the right financial metric.
Yeah, you nailed it there. And so how do we get better at that, right? How do we manage that balance?
Yeah.
And so I think that's likely why our Elastic Engineering offering is proving so effective. So historically, we were sometimes too reactive,
Hmm.
and then once we're better at the reactive, became more proactive. We were still too transactional, right? And so
Yeah.
we were meeting the customer's needs, oftentimes anticipating the customer's needs, but we didn't understand the customer's business objectives very well. And so, I think as we've developed this new Elastic Engineering offering, where we're able to take small groups of teams working directly with a small customer base, we do weekly or bi-weekly sprint reviews, and so we know exactly what we're doing proactively on a bi-weekly view,
Right.
to make sure that we are transforming the customer's needs. But more importantly, we also do a 3 to 6 month long range plan with the customer, and so we
Mm.
know what their business objective is, and we know the steps required iteratively to get there, right? And so that really, really helps us understand the customer's cost pressures, business objectives, or even technology challenges that they may have today or be bringing with them as baggage. I think that motion is proving very, very effective to find that balance between technology, cost, business.
Well, and it's huge because not everybody is going to move to a rack space, but all of these problems have to be solved by every company, because now more than ever, every company not only is a technology company and a software company, but they're also a data company, and so these are things they have to solve for. Now, the question was asked, here in the chat, how do you build cloud agnostic products and platform? I think I would counter that, because you don't always have to be cloud agnostic. It does very much make sense for certain organizations to focus in on a single cloud, and they have very good reasons for doing it. And it doesn't mean that means it's going to be a small company that's going to do that, although primarily. I think we see smaller companies doing that. But take a company like Capital One, which for years has been very public and very forward about the fact that they are an AWS company, or let's take Walmart, who is very much in the Microsoft camp. And so what you find is there are certain economies of scale that you can get by focusing in a single cloud. So sometimes it doesn't make sense to. But I'll answer the short way to answer that question. How do you build it? Well, you build it on containers. Back to those trends that we saw. Containerization gives you the ability to move from cloud to cloud. Now, we've been dabbling in containers, for 10 years now, in some fit or fashion, even in around Rackspace. Travis, how much are containers factoring into the folks that you're hiring for? Is it a key thing that enterprise needs to be concerned about in the technologies they're staffing for?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I'll expand on your response about being cloud agnostic or maybe a multi-cloud customer. So I'll tell you from my experience, we have very, very few customers that are successfully operating multi-cloud. Even the customers that claim to operate multi-cloud, short of containers workloads, they are operating still single cloud across business units. So it may appear that one big customer is multi-cloud, but really when you break it down, business units are usually operating in single clouds. But you're right, the container portability has changed that, but there are still plenty of, we'll say, vendor lock-in or vendor nuances at the container level within each of the platforms, right? And so while the containers themselves are platform agnostic, the orchestration and the ecosystem that you might manage them still creates vendor nuances for the most part. So that's created a lot of challenges as well. But where I've landed on containers or Kubernetes specifically is that at the purest level, Kubernetes should be platform agnostic.
Yes.
But reality is there are platform nuances that are required to manage that. And so our AWS engineers, for example, will manage to a depth on that container stack. But at some point, if it becomes a very, very specialized Kubernetes challenge, we have Kubernetes specialists that will operate across all platforms that can answer those deep level questions. And so we've kind of said, talking about specialists again, right? You have your cloud engineers, which focus on the platform level requirements, but still we have a new specialization, which is Kubernetes. We feel that the complexity and the customer demand is strong enough to make that its own specialty at this point.
Right. Absolutely, it is. I mean, we've seen an incredible uptick in customers utilizing that, and of course, we work on solutions for what that looks like, and those solutions end up in support, and those support engineers end up working for you. So speaking about ending up working for you, I would imagine in a role like yours with a span that you have, that you're kind of constantly looking for the best and brightest. Correct statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if somebody were to go to the Rackspace website today and go to jobs, they could probably find some cloud engineers or specific roles that you're hiring for. Anything in particular you're looking for? You can shout out people to who you're looking for. What kind of what kind of skills?
Yeah. So I think right now I want to say I have over 50 AWS engineer roles open globally at this point. So I'm actively hiring, aggressively hiring, and my general main support centers are US work from home, UK work from home, India work from home, Mexico, Australia. So we've diversified to find the right talent. If you're interested and if you see a role that's aspirational or appropriate for your skill set, please engage, and we'll talk about what the next steps are. I'm also hiring for Azure. I'm always hiring for GCP. GCP is a scarce skill set in the market. So yeah, any of those technologies, I would love to have a conversation.
Awesome. All right. Well, Travis, thanks for being a part of this today. I'd love to have you back because I think it's really important. And again, we're not just trying to shine a light on how Rackspace does it, but for the sake of Rackspace, but the fact that we do it at the scale that we do across, the 120,000 different customers that we have globally. I think there's something to be learned from that example. All right. So as we come to a close on today's program, I do want to call out that you're not going to see me for a couple of days. Got a little scheduled PTO, but if you'll watch LinkedIn, you're going to see some updates from the road. I think as well. Travis, I'm taking my youngest to college. It's empty nest time, my friend.
There you go.
Who knows what's going to happen now? All right, everyone. We really do appreciate you taking the time today. And Travis, as always, it's great to see you. And thanks for being a part of this today. Everyone, have a great day.
Yeah, my pleasure.